Well, let's take a break from the tragicomedy in Victoria. Let's go to something, well, actually, it's just as crazy in the US. I don't understand how it could get so bad there with Donald Trump. I mean, not just with what he's doing or not doing, depending on how you look at stuff, but the intense hatred's there now. The latest, Donald Trump's niece has now published a book. She's cross she didn't get the inheritance she reckons she deserves, and she calls Trump a sociopath and worse. She says his sister laughs at him. She says, oh, look, I admit to leaking financial documents to embarrass Donald Trump, to the New York Times. Instant bestseller, that kind of stuff. But more seriously, the mainstream media seems absolutely determined to hate whatever Trump says. Whatever he says, whatever he supports, they hate it. Like the drug that he says he was taking against the coronavirus.
I happen to be taking it. Hydroxychloroquine?
I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine.
Well, if Donald Trump was taking hydroxychloroquine, it must be a stupid idea. The media went on a crusade to prove that Trump was not just wrong, but dangerous and reckless. He'd even caused the death of a man who'd swallowed, for some God knows reason, a fish tank cleaner. And you have to wonder now, how many lives did the media's anti-chloroquine hysteria cause? Because, in fact, hydroxychloroquine is being trialled, and as these two studies here, many overseas, as an early treatment or preventative for the coronavirus. And now, a new study of 2,500 patients, very scientific study, found that this drug cut the death rate in half. And this was the drug that journalists mocked simply because Donald Trump thought it might work. That's how insane the debate is over there. That's how polarised. Now, to help me understand how it got so awful, I've invited someone from the other side of the political fence. Remarkable career, this woman. Was press officer to the wife of then President Jimmy Carter, was a strategic consultant to President Bill Clinton, now lives in Australia. Barbara Heineback, thank you so much for joining me and welcome. Has America ever been so polarised in your long life as a political operative, so unable to have a serious and civil debate?
Absolutely not, Andrew. This has been an amazing time in our country's history. It is so sad. And when you watch and you see that whatever Donald Trump tries to do, they're going to destroy it. When I say the Democrats and all that has taken place now with what I call identity politics, I think there are several reasons for this. Number one, Donald Trump is one of the first presidents that's come into the White House that didn't have the invisible handcuffs on when he arrived at the Oval Office. What I mean by that, over 90% of your elite politicians, the Congress, the Senate, the White House, they are owned by the individuals, the power players that put them in office. Usually if it's the Republican administration, it would have been the Bush dynasty in recent years. Over the last couple of decades with the Democrats, the Clintons were very foxy at controlling and absolutely spreading their individuals in every department of government throughout the USA, whether it was labor, commerce, the State Department, throughout. And Donald Trump came in on his own recognizance. Yeah, he went broke twice. He was born, maybe I wouldn't call it with a silver spoon, but certainly a silver-plated spoon with his dad. He went broke twice and then kind of came back on his own and became a very wealthy man. So no one owns him. And because of that, he has been able to expose a lot of the lack of governance throughout the states, whether it was under an administrative, Democratic or Republican team. And this has turned the Democrats on their heels. They have tried to destroy this man and impeach him before he even walked into the Oval Office. And that didn't really mean much because the Senate has the majority. But more important, we have been listening to identity politics since about 2 weeks before he came into the White House. They tried to get him on Russian collusion. Took him a couple of years, millions of dollars wasted. That didn't work. And then they tried with, now they're trying to work on COVID-19. You know, we have two individuals that are running the current situation, not in America as it is throughout the world, and what your program was just talking about in Victoria. Dr. Fauci has one responsibility to save lives, but Donald Trump has the responsibility as president to protect the citizens of the USA, number one, and also to move commerce, and he's got to do this. If we look at countries like Sweden, where they never closed down, their deaths were not that high. When you look at surrounding countries and you look at Denmark, Norway, they had about double the deaths. However, children went to school, they stayed open for work, and it has been proven that very few youngsters die. It's less than 0%, whether you're talking about Sweden, the USA, or wherever, probably about the same here in Australia too. I don't know the statistics here on the death numbers.
But there's one thing I want to ask you while I've still got just a skerrick of time here. About, you mentioned the identity politics. I think that is so toxic, and that is supercharging this debate. I want to show viewers a remarkable bit of footage. We've seen all the rioting, we've seen the violence, we've seen the looting, we've seen all that. In Georgia, in the Stone Mountain Park there, heavily armed supporters of Black Lives Matter were actually stopping and threatening motorists and demanding reparations from white ones. Have a listen to this.
What are you in the question? Everywhere you go, you invade, steal, rape, rob, and kill us. Oh, really? Then you steal people's culture, then you have the nerve to have an attitude about it. Where's our reparations?
Barbara, are you pessimistic about the future of America when you've got these deep divisions and hatreds, not just political, but now racial as well? I don't know, now racial, but racial as well.
Yeah, the racial business started, if we go back, and it would take me time and more than this segment right now to talk about when the race card was first dropped on Donald Trump. And it basically started about 2 weeks before Election Day, when Hillary realized for the first time that she may not win this thing, because she thought, you know, for 40 years she had it. Because why? Because I deserve it. I guess she was watching too many commercials. I don't know. But the racial card in America has been played by the Democrats, and I think people are beginning to wake up. However, I'm sorry to say, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And the president has offered to go into these cities like Detroit, Baltimore, Atlanta, New York, and they've refused to allow him to come in. Even in Washington, D.C., when he tried to come in and quiet things that were going on around the White House, the mayor, Mayor Bowsey, who is a Black American woman, mayor, she kicked out the National Guard. And she told them they had to go and got them out of the hotel even. And we saw what's happened in Seattle, and we lost lives there. When you have Antifa and you have Black Lives Matter, which I've been saying all along is not going to be the group that is going to create any positive change in America. And I thought they were concerned about Black American lives. And instead of thinking of education and jobs and a better opportunity going forward and the concerns with the police, what are they doing? Tearing down statues. It is ridiculous.
Dude, honestly, really, you know, stonemasons around America will be pleased for the extra work they're getting, but that's about the only positive I can see in that. Barbara Heineback, I'm going to have you back on again. Thank you so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a good evening. Good night.